Good morning, everyone. Sorry we're so late. That's all my fault. I have Mike on panel with me this morning, and we're going to be talking about the John Benet Ramsey case, 25 years after her murder. Bless her little heart. Hey, Sapphire. Let me see if I can find my live chat. Make sure I got my YouTube muted. It looks like Sapphire's our only audience this morning, but hey, that's all right. No, we got 5 people watching. That's all right. We're still going to have a good stream. People will be watching the replay and stuff. Should I pull up John Benet's picture? Let me see. I'm trying to screen share here. And I'm
Well,
trying
good
to.
morning to Cece and good morning to everyone in chat.
Good morning, Mike.
Thank you
It's
for having me.
it's so good to have you on panel because you know so much about the Ramsey case, and I love it. You really know your stuff. Okay, here's her picture.
Yes, and here we are, 25 years later, still unsolved cold case.
Did you watch the new documentary?
The one with Lou Smith's family?
I'm not sure. Cement Shoes was telling me about it in chat. He had just watched it. He said he put the link to it, I guess, under my live stream yesterday. Maybe it was a community post. He told me I needed to check it out and tell you about it. He said it
I'll have
was
to,
really good.
I'll have to check that out then afterwards.
I just read an article that they have tested like 1,000 pieces of evidence for DNA. Hey, Short Nice, Mandy Hall. Good morning, ladies. How are y'all doing? So should we get started? Give a
Sure.
little back history here. JonBenet Ramsey. In the early morning hours of December 26, 1996, John and Patsy Ramsey awoke to find their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet Ramsey, missing from her bed at their home in Boulder, Colorado. Patsy and John had woken up early to prepare for a trip when Patsy discovered a ransom note on the stairs demanding $118,000 for their daughter's safe return. Despite the note's warning not to involve police, Patsy immediately called them, as well as friends and family, in order to aid in the search for little John Bonet. Police arrived at 5:55 a.m., found no signs of forced entry, but did not search the basement, where her body would eventually be found. Should I go on, Mike? Before John Bonet's body was even found, there were many investigative mistakes made. Only John Bonet's room was cornered off, so friends and family roamed the rest of the house, picking up things and potentially destroying evidence. The Boulder Police Department also shared evidence they found with the Ramseys and delayed conducting their informal interviews with the parents. At 1 o'clock p.m., detectives instructed Mr. Ramsey and a family friend to go around the basement to see if anything was amiss. The first place they looked was the basement where they found John Benet's body. John Ramsey immediately picked up his daughter's body and brought her upstairs, which unfortunately destroyed potential evidence by disturbing the crime scene. Um, can you hear me, Mike?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, should I go on and read about the autopsy? Should I continue before we start talking?
I'm sure, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay. During the autopsy, it was discovered that John Bonet had died from asphyxiation due to strangulation, in addition to a skull fracture. Her mouth had been covered in duct tape. Her wrist and neck were wrapped with a white cord. Her torso had been covered in a white blanket. There was no conclusive evidence of rape, as no semen was found on the body, and her private area appeared to have been wiped clean. Oh, gosh. Although a sexual assault had occurred. The makeshift garret was made using a length of cord and a part of a paintbrush from the basement. The coroner also found what was believed to be pineapple in JonBenet's stomach. Her parents do not remember giving her any that night before she died, but there was a bowl of pineapple in the kitchen, which had her 9-year-old brother Burke's fingerprints on it. However, this meant little since time cannot be attributed to fingerprints. The Ramseys maintained Burke was in his room all night asleep, and there was never any physical evidence to reflect otherwise. Um, so there are two popular theories in the Ramsey case: the family theory and the intruder theory. The initial investigation focused heavily on the Ramsey family for many reasons. The police felt that the ransom note was staged, as it was unusually long, written using a pen and paper from the Ramseys' house that demanded almost the exact amount of money that John had received as a bonus earlier that year. Additionally, the Ramseys were reluctant to cooperate with police, though they later said this was because they feared the police would not conduct a full investigation and target at them as easy suspects. Okay, target them as easy suspects. However, all three members of the immediate family were questioned by investigators and submitting handwriting samples to compare to the ransom letter. Both John and Burke were cleared of any suspicion of writing the note, although, although much was made that Patsy could not be conclusively cleared by her handwriting sample. This analysis was not further supported by any other evidence. Despite a large pool of suspects, the media immediately focused on JonBenet's parents, and they spent years under the harsh limelight of the public eye. In 1999, a Colorado grand jury voted to indict the Ramseys on child endangerment, obstruction of a murder investigation. However, the prosecutor felt that the evidence did not meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard and declined to prosecute. JonBenet's parents were never officially named as suspects in the murder. Alternatively, the intruder theory had lots of physical evidence to support it. There was a boot print found next to JonBenet's body, which did not belong to anyone in the family. There was also a broken window in the basement, which was believed to be the most likely point of entry for an intruder. Additionally, there was DNA from drops of blood from an unknown male found on her underwear. The floors in the Ramseys' home were heavily carpeted, making it plausible for an intruder to have carried JonBenet downstairs without waking the family. Okay, Mike, do you want to jump in and talk about the theories and
Sure,
inconsistencies?
sure.
Okay, we're
Um,
just
so here
start
we
where.
are. Sure. So here we are 25 years later,
Okay,
in the JonBenet Ramsey case.
yes,
I'll go over some observations and inconsistencies throughout the case. So we know that the Boulder police did receive little cooperation from JonBenet's parents. Investigators realized the Ramseys showed uncharacteristic behavior for parents of a, kidnapped and then later on murdered child.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, I just want to say, I think it's weird that like she immediately called the police, even though the ransom note said, "If you call police, we're going to kill her." Right?
exactly.
And she got family and friends.
Exactly.
I would be so panicked out, I wouldn't be thinking about calling anybody but the police. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. It's just, it's weird how, there's the note there and it tells you not to do this and not to do that, but they went ahead anyway and did everything the note told them not to do. So, that's just something that's just weird throughout the whole, you know, events that day. But,
Yeah,
allowing for the fact that everyone grieves differently, law enforcement officers are taught behavioral red flags that, that they should consider suspicious.
right.
So, a few examples that happened during that time. that we know from officers that were in the house that John was not seen at any time going near Patsy or comforting her. From the time police entered the Ramsey house after the 911 call to when the Ramseys left that afternoon, the officer that showed up that morning, which was Officer Rick French, he told colleagues that he had been struck by how differently both parents were reacting that morning. Most parents cling to each other for support, at the moment of, quote unquote, kidnapped child. But, you had John Ramsey that day, cool and collected. Um, and then you have Patsy, basically, who sat there in their sunroom, sobbing. So, that just, was like a red flag for the officer that morning, noticing how different both parents were reacting and noticing how neither of them were really even bothering with each other. Um, Officer French also later stated, and he recalled how the grieving mother eyes just constantly stayed on him while he was there. He said he remembered her awkward attempt to conceal, her eyes peering through her fingers as she was like watching him. And during all that time, John was supposedly just pacing the floor in the other room opposite from Patsy, back and forth. You know, it's just all weird how neither parent were with each other during all this time as their child is quote unquote kidnapped. Um, you had Detective Linda Arndt, who observed John Ramsey apparently crying over JonBenet's body once he brought her upstairs, but she saw no tears. So to her, that just seemed to be just acting, staged a scene. Um, the Ramseys asked the Boulder Police Department no questions about the murder at the time. They never asked about the autopsy, nor asked how JonBenet was killed, which, most parents, maybe it could be a 50-50 thing where some parents maybe want to know what happened compared to other parents, not wanting to know what happened to their child. So that just was another inconsistency at the time.
Yeah. I would wanna know what happened to my child, so that seems really weird to me. Um, Now the family friend that they called over, like, another couple. Well, that the man went to that room that JonBenet was in the basement and had opened the door, but couldn't find the light switch and didn't see her body laying there, according to him. And
Correct.
then when, after the cops had got there and the lady officer was there, she saw John pacing around, so she told him to go, check the house again. And he went straight to the basement into that room, flipped on the light, and found her. That seems a little odd.
Yeah, that's always seemed odd to me that he just went exactly straight there. Um, they say when someone's involved in some kind of murder and there are other people around, they kind of go back to the body to say, "Oh my God, look what I found," to try to delay and make it seem like as if they didn't know. But I think he knew the entire time that she was in there. y- You know, Linda Arndt stated in her statement that she told him to search from top to bottom, which she probably should have never made him search anywhere. Um, but he
Yeah.
just basically went straight for the basement.
Yeah, she felt that odd because she said search from the top to the bottom, and he went to the bottom, straight to the
Exactly.
bottom.
Yes.
Um, and then they sent Burke home with the family friends, right?
Exactly. That's another odd observation and inconsistency to me is, if you have one child that's quote unquote kidnapped and missing, why would you want to have your other child out of your sight? You know, did they know that she would eventually be found and that's why they didn't want him there? That to me it seems as if that they sent him to the friend's house because they knew she was in the basement and they knew she would eventually be found, and God knows what that boy might have said once they brought her body up. That's just how I looked at it. Because if my child was kidnapped and I had another child in the home, I would have that child cling to me for dear life, not wanting to have them out of my sight.
Yes. Maybe they didn't want him talking to the police.
Sure,
And why lie about the pineapple? I don't understand that.
the pineapple is honestly, to me, one of the biggest pieces of evidence. We know from that autopsy report that there was pineapple found in her, system,
Mhm.
and we know for a fact that the pineapple bowl and the glass of tea that was on the table, we know that there's a fingerprint from Burke Ramsey on there, and we
Yeah.
know that there's a fingerprint from Patsy Ramsey on there. But she claims in her interviews that she don't know how that bowl got there. She never put that bowl there because she wouldn't have served it that way. Um, I just find that odd because if they got home 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and you're serving your child a snack before bed, I don't think anybody really cares how it's being served.
Yes, and that was one of his I read that was one of his favorite snacks, like pineapple and milk, I guess.
Yes,
Maybe
both
pineapple.
children.
Yeah, I have a theory about that, what happened,
So,
but I better not
that's a
say.
big piece of evidence. That to me is a big piece of evidence because that's, basically an inconsistency of how she doesn't know how it got there, but her and the son's fingerprints are basically all over that. And we know for a fact that the pineapple was in her system. So it's just it's just a lot of lies and cover-ups and deceits. It just the intruder theory to me is just there's not really much evidence as they make it sound like there is.
Yeah. Can we talk about, like, the blanket in the suitcase in the basement in the room JonBenet was found in? Didn't it have, like, semen on it, on that blanket from JonBenet's, like, half-brother, older half-brother?
So yes, the suitcase was found in the train room under the window that they reportedly, said that, oh, that's how the killer got up and out of the window. He stepped on the suitcase and fled the home from there. But we all know, I'm sure, and I'm sure anybody could try this. Suitcases aren't that sturdy to where you could step on it and hoist yourself out of a window without it falling over.
No,
Um,
it would be hard to do, and that window, I know my fat butt couldn't go out it. There's no way I could get out that window, especially trying to get out of it on a suitcase. That's so strange that
it
there would
is.
be a blanket in that suitcase, and it has his DNA on it. What is his name? John's older
John
son,
Andrew.
John Andrew. That is so strange to me.
Yes. In that suitcase there was I believe it was a black blanket. Um, it's reported that there was semen from him on that blanket, as well as a Dr. Seuss book. I can't remember exactly which one, but that was also in the suitcase.
That would lead you to believe that someone lured a child down there, maybe was reading them a book and
Yes,
yeah,
or the suitcase to me
read it.
honestly is just a form of staging. That's just how it looks. The broken window. We know from John Ramsey stating that he broke that window to get into the house because he constantly was forgetting his keys, and he came in through there at a time. Um, we all know Lou Smith's big thing is though there's a scuff mark on the wall from the window. But
Mhm.
who's to say that that wasn't done by John Ramsey when he went through that window?
Right.
That could have been there for months. Because from if anybody's ever watched the video recordings of police going through the house, recording the house after everything happened, that house really wasn't in tip-top clean shape or organized shape. There was stuff everywhere.
Right.
You know, who's to say that footprint mark on the wall was just not from him and never just cleaned up or touched up?
Right. I mean, it could have been from a mover or anyone, maybe carried
Exactly.
boxes down there when they were moving in. Who knows? Um, it would have had to have been someone familiar with the house because the way the house was laid out back then, I mean, you wouldn't know your way around.
No, that was an extremely large home. Well, they kind of have it listed as a mansion.
Twists and turns all about. Fancy home.
Yes, and one of the first maids that the Ramseys had in their home said she didn't even know that room was even down there in the basement, which they have it labeled as the wine cellar. She didn't know it was there for months working for the Ramseys. So I don't know how an quote unquote intruder could have been in there for however many hours they say,
Yeah.
and just knew the layout that easily.
And took time to write a ransom note from inside the house. An intruder would be wanting to get in, take the child with them. Wouldn't they be afraid they would get caught, you would think, if you were an intruder?
Exactly. It's just like I said, the intruder theory. They make it seem like there's so much for that, but in reality, if you really look at the inconsistencies from the family and look at the actual evidence that they do have, such as the pineapple ball and everything, and the ransom note, they can't exclude Patsy Ramsey from it. She submitted, I think, 5 handwriting samples, and there's numerous amounts of handwriting experts that said that it's highly probable that she wrote it. They cannot exclude her from it.
Yeah, and if you've ever watched the video of her, when they're asking her, "Does this look like your handwriting?" The way she acts about it and she won't answer, I mean, she won't give a straight answer. It's like she knows it's her handwriting. And that
Exactly.
was so weird. I mean, she looked so guilty in that video.
She does, and they actually showed her actual handwriting alongside the ransom note handwriting, even
Yes.
though she didn't know what they were, but she couldn't even tell that was her own handwriting, even though it was.
Yeah, they also showed her an entry form to a beauty pageant she entered JonBenet in, and it was the
Yes,
same handwriting. And I mean, she wouldn't even say it was her handwriting. She's like, it looks like my signature on there.
yes, exactly. As well as JonBenet's baby book, they showed her that during that interview, and she wasn't sure if she wrote it or not. Now, most mothers or fathers, mostly mothers, I would say, you know, have baby books for their children and write in there alongside with pictures. Um, so for her not to know that that was hers or she couldn't remember if she did that, I just find that's just very odd.
Yeah, it's very, very odd. It makes her look uh, guilty,
Guilty.
hiding
Yeah.
something. Yeah, most definitely. And then they would an interview with police. Didn't they give like an interview on TV before they actually even sat down with police?
Yes. So despite considerable public pressure, the Ramseys delayed formal interviews with law enforcement for about 4 months. Most innocent parents of a murdered child are anxious to answer police questions, not only to clear themselves, but to help find who the quote unquote perpetrator is. But the
Right.
Ramses basically wanted to know what the police were going to ask them and also wanted a copy of the ransom note. But, they waited 4 months to do formal interviews, but had no problem going on CNN like I don't know, 4 days later.
Yeah, that one interview, she was out of it on Valiums, Xanaxes, you could tell, and,
Oh, yeah.
he was giving her some some looks to the side. I mean, she was completely zoned out.
Sure, he probably was nervous and embarrassed, and
Yeah,
if you notice, John, in most of his interviews that he does either on TV or with police, he always looks down. He never looks straight in the eye or straight to the camera. Um, he constantly looks down, and they say people who lie never look in the face of the person that they're talking to.
right, and they look
They
off
look
to the side.
exactly, exactly. And you could tell in a lot of interviews with John that he always is looking down. And somebody did say, I forget who it was, but a specialist, and um, she said that oftentimes when people look down, they look down in shame.
Yeah.
And to me, I believe that. I believe that's exactly what it was.
Um, and it was Patsy's, wasn't it one of Patsy's paintbrushes that they made the garrote out of? I think I'm saying that correctly.
Yes, yes. It was her paintbrush and her paint tray down in the basement, which was broken. It was also used to supposedly sexualize, um, the child. But I really can't think of a quote unquote intruder coming into the house and using a paintbrush to do that to a child. Um, but in the forms of staging, I could see that happen, especially when you're trying to, divert any kind of secrets or what has been prior going on in the home.
Yeah. Um, do you think so you think the body was staged?
100%. There is no doubt in my mind, um, that that body was not staged. It was wiped down. We know it was wiped down from the autopsy report that, you know, under the ultraviolet light, they could have saw, smears on her leg, which they assumed was semen, which they were hoping that's what it was, so they could, nail somebody. But here it was basically blood from JonBenet that was wiped down. But like obviously under the ultraviolet blue light, you could still see the smear marks from there. I don't think a perpetrator would honestly, wipe the victim down afterwards, lay her all nice and wrapped in the white blanket that she was found in, have her pink Barbie nightgown wrapped in there with her. I
Right.
don't see a perpetrator doing that. That to me that just seems and looks as if it was all staged. And I'll go on with the boot print that was in the wine cellar that, people hold on to,
Mhm.
stating that, oh, that was the intruder's footprint. That footprint could have been there, you know, from somebody doing work in the house that just happened to be in that room because there was paint cans in that room that you could have saw in pictures. That print could have came from there. That print could have came from FBI or police or, walking in that room afterwards to take pictures or whatnot. Um, it's been reported that Burke supposedly had high tech boots that, was initially, they found out. So like, that really could have came from everywhere. I think they just kind of found little things that they could have tweaked to make it seem, like an intruder. But there's like I said, there's just really not much to really go off of. Um, I know that the DNA, they make that such a big thing,
Yes.
but that DNA was and is primarily John Benet's, DNA. And also it's so minute that they can't really distinguish, you know, if it's a single person, if it's they kind of have it to where it's like multiple DNAs all kind of mixed together, but it's so small. I think if there was an actual intruder in there, there'd be a lot more than just a little minute piece of DNA.
So I'm reading right here. In 2010, the case was officially reopened with renewed focus on DNA samples. Further testing has been conducted on the samples, and experts now believe that the sample is actually from two individuals
Hmm.
rather than one. Um, in 2016, it was announced the DNA would be sent to the CBI to be tested using a more modern methods, and authorities hope to develop an even stronger DNA profile of the killer. I mean, could the DNA been from someone who made the clothes at the factory? touch DNA? I mean, that's a possibility.
Well, yeah, that's been proposed out there that that could have came from a factory worker. Um, the underwear that she had on at the time was, I think, like 3 or 4 sizes too big for her body, which is odd to me. Why was she wearing underwear that was that big?
Hmm.
That's just another odd inconsistency of, was that put on her afterwards, or was that used for, some other weird, you know, sexualized thing that was going on?
Okay, so the pajamas she was found in, was those the same pajamas they put on her when she went to bed that night? When they put her to bed?
I believe that she had on that long john pajamas, if I'm not
Uh-huh.
mistaken,
Yeah.
that night. And on autopsy and pictures and whatnot, they're all obviously urine stained because when you pass away,
Yeah.
you kind of do
Yeah.
that. Um, so it's just very odd, the whole thing. Why was the pink Barbie nightgown down there wrapped in the blanket with her? And um, you know, we know that's really not been released, but I know, because I have that information and paperwork, that
Mhm.
the Barbie nightgown that was found wrapped up in the blanket had Burke's fingerprints all over it.
Wow.
But you know, also for a governor at the time, Governor Bill Owens at that time expressed his frustration with what appeared to be, the Ramsey's non-cooperation with the entire investigation. Made a public statement on TV, which I believe was 1999. Um, and I'm gonna kind of go off memory here, but I believe he said something on the lines of, like, if I could speak to John and Patsy, I tell them to quit hiding behind their lawyers, and come to Boulder and help us and work with us, find the killer, like wherever it was going to lead to. But
Yeah.
they didn't.
And it's not unheard of. A brother would kill his sister. Look at that little, what is his name? His last name is Bennett. Let me see here. Paris. Paris Bennett. He killed his little sister when he was like 12 or 13 years old. He got the babysitter to go on home. Uh-oh, my phone's playing something. While his mom was at work, and he killed his sister and then went and masturbated afterwards. He was only like 13, 14 years old. So it
Yeah,
kind of was, yeah,
there are sick situations, where there are sibling rivalry, and there are times where things go to the extreme.
hmm,
y- You know, I truly don't believe that there was any unknown intruder or perpetrator in that home that night. I firmly and strongly believe, based off of the evidence that we actually do have, that there was something going on in that home that night, and it was someone who lived there.
right. John Bonet was a bedwetter. That can be a sign of abuse,
Yeah, yes, it could. Yes, it
some
could.
sort of abuse. Hadn't she been going to the doctor? Patsy taking her to the doctor a lot?
Yeah, I believe in that year she went to the doctor. I can't remember the exact number, but I think just say 20 times in one year, which is very odd, unless your child's actually, like, truly sick. But Patsy basically was like, oh well, she had bronchitis, and now she had pneumonia. Um, but
Yeah,
I can't picture the child having it 20 times in a year.
I'm telling you, that's an awful lot. A couple times a year going to the doctor, um, is normal. Just doing regular checkups. I mean, kids get sick, but that many times, that seems weird to me.
It
So
does.
weird to me.
It's
Now, I always was suspicious of the Santa Claus dude because I read that his daughter, the guy that played Santa Claus, I guess at the Christmas party they had been to,
mhm.
his daughter actually disappeared. Did you know that?
Bill McReynolds.
Yes,
Um,
around Christmas.
yes, his wife actually, she wrote a play, which kind of is disturbing, honestly,
Yes.
of a young girl being, in the basement of her home and being sexualized and raped and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, which is honestly, it's just a very weird story. But there was no evidence to link him to the murder, and his DNA. There was none of his DNA in that home that they could have found. But he's been a very high. I feel as if the Ramseys kind of just, oh, this person, oh, that person, oh yeah, it probably was this one. I think they just kind of threw whoever they could have thrown in front of the bus, basically, just to take the focus off of them.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah, they definitely acted weird. I mean, you would think that your child just been found murdered in your home, you'd want to cooperate with investigators and get the murderer off the streets, help find the murderer, tell them everything that you know. I mean, it just don't make sense. What intruder is going to write the ransom note from inside the house
And do a
and
practice run
practice
prior.
writing it? And let's not forget that they
Yes,
practice writing it, right?
exactly. Yep, you're right. But honestly, what was more of a concern to investigators besides all this unusual behavior,
Hmm.
were just the numerous conflicting statements made by John and Patsy. They had, detailed record of the inconsistencies that were provided to the detectives, um, on the account of the events surrounding John Benet's death. They basically told three different types of stories about whether John Bonet was awake or not awake once they came home that night, from the White House. We know that Burke Ramsey stated that John Bonet walked in slowly and walked up the spiral stairs ahead of Patsy. We know
Right.
that Patsy Ramsey, when she was interviewed by Detective Tom Trujillo, asked her, did you wake her up to get her, inside the house? And she basically stated, she was really zonked, and John carried her up to her room and laid her down, and I basically got her undressed. And then you have John Ramsey's statement, which he initially told police that he read to both children before they went to sleep. He confirmed this to Detective Linda Arndt, that he read to John Bonet after tucking her in, which he later denied. You know,
I mean, why would he say that and then deny it if he wasn't hiding something? See, that don't even.
exactly.
They made themselves look guilty, in my opinion. Now their excuse was they knew the police were going to target them, so that's why they lawyered up.
Yes, that was their excuse. But if you have nothing to hide and you're, you know, innocent, if you are, um, you're going to go and answer whatever questions you possibly can to clear yourself. But see, the Ramseys wanted to make sure that Patsy's version was going to match with John's version,
Yeah,
because we also know the big famous question, did Patsy really check on Burke? In her police interview in April of '97, um, she told detectives, or police, I should say, I don't know, I didn't go in there and look. But then you have her on her June '98 police interview. She said, I don't think I did. I think John did. But then in their book that they came out with, Death of Innocence, in 1999, this is a quote unquote statement from their book where they both said, Both of us race to Burke's room at the far end of the second floor and find him apparently still asleep. So, there you have three inconsistencies right there.
Right.
So, like,
And
no, nothing matches up with their statements ever.
and she had on the same clothes from the night before. She would have never done that.
Exactly. Same
She
clothes
was
from the night
always
before.
dressed to freaking kill. No wrinkles, anything. I don't
She
think
did.
she'd been to bed that night.
No, she had the same clothes on as the night before. Her hair was still done. Her makeup was still on. Her side of the bed was still made, like it was never touched. And that another thing that led to investigators to believe that she never was asleep that night.
Yeah. I've seen or heard people theorize that maybe she snapped on JonBenet because she was a bedwetter. She wet the bed that night. I don't think that's what happened though.
I don't exactly think that's what happened either, to be
Mm-mm.
honest. But I do believe that, like I said, everyone in that home had a part. Had a part.
Yeah, I think there was a cover up for someone in that home. I'm not going to flat out accuse anyone, but what did you think about Burke's interview with Dr. Phil?
Well, I think that he appeared odd to me. He
Yeah,
seemed extremely nervous.
yeah,
Um, uh, another thing, like I said with John, constantly looking down.
yeah,
Burke basically never looks in the eyes of Dr. Phil when he's being asked questions. When they ask him on the interview, like, "Did you murder your sister?" He looks straight down and says, "No." You know,
right.
and to me,
His
that's just odd.
his interviews when he was a child, the videos that I've watched of it, he was odd then when they were interviewing him about his sister's murder. And he had
Exactly.
his feet propped up underneath them, and he just I don't know, it didn't seem to bother him to talk about his sister's murder. He was
It
just a
didn't.
kid, but
And in the childhood interviews with Burke, what also stuck out to me, which I thought was very odd as well, is in that interview, they say, "What do you think happened to your sister?" And he basically says, "Oh, well, I know what happened," which I thought was kind of odd. And then they ask him, I believe, like, what happened? And he basically says, "Oh, well, I think somebody took her down the basement very quietly and maybe hit her over the head."
yeah.
Now, I don't know how that young boy at the time would know such information. I can't picture the parents saying, "Oh yeah, we found her in the basement. She had this and that done to her," and I don't think that parents would really tell their children that information that young.
He hit her in the head, what, about a year before the murder, 6 months before the murder? He hit her in the head with,
Golf club,
a golf club.
yeah,
I have read and heard that he was very jealous of her, like smearing feces
in her room,
in her
yes, on
room.
her
I don't know if that's
pillows.
true,
I think there was a lot
allegedly.
of jealousy in that house because she got so much of the attention.
Yes. Her and Patsy always doing those glitz pageants.
Yes, which I don't really, you know, I don't really like that type of thing because I do like a lot of people do. They think it kind of sexualizes a child.
It does.
It
I
does.
mean, I used to watch toddlers and tiaras all the time. I used to love watching it. And I never thought much about it because my mind's not sick like these weirdos. But that's a weirdo's dream to see those little kids up there in those little bathing
Outfits.
suits and makeup and outfits. It is. It's a pedophile's dream.
Exactly.
Um, and I never thought much about it until, I started watching stuff about the John Benet Ramsey case and really thinking about it. I don't like the glitz pageants. A normal little beauty pageant like we had when I was a kid where you just had on like, a regular long dress. I mean, I think that's okay, but the glitz pageants with the makeup and the fake tans and the nails and in the skimpy outfits. It's not good.
Exactly.
It's not good.
Another thing I do want to get into, because I know since it's been 25 years and
Yeah,
a lot of these news programs basically keep saying, oh, the Ramseys were exonerated from the DNA
yeah,
evidence and blah, blah, blah. Um, the Ramseys are still under investigation by Boulder police. In true facts, they have never been cleared or exonerated. You know, District Attorney Mary Lacey, she basically pretended they had been exonerated in 2008, but subsequent amount of district attorneys and police have confirmed this is not the case. You know, the exoneration letter, and this is from, I believe, District Attorney Dan Garnett, who was a former DA, or is the former DA. He basically stated that the exoneration letter is not legally binding. You know, it's basically a good faith option. I mean, I'm sorry, not option, a good faith opinion, and has no legal importance but the opinion of the person who had the job before he did.
right.
You know, she, her and John Ramsey used to meet a lot in private. What was that about?
Yeah, what was that about? What was that tell you? The grand jury chose to indict them, but the prosecutors chose
They
not to go
did.
forward with it.
Alex Hunter, which I don't believe he did his job correctly. He didn't want to go along with the grand jury's indictment, which I think that it should have been brought to trial of what they thought. We know from the 4 pages that were released from the indictment that the grand jury believed that both parents were involved in putting their child in harm, you know, and deceiving police and allowing someone to commit the murder, as well as helping the person with the cover up. We all know that from the 4 pages that were released, out of, I believe, 18. What do those other 14 pages say? Like, is there somebody else's name on there that's why they're not releasing it? Is there details of what they really believed happened on those 14 pages? You know, unless they're ever revealed or known to the public, we may never know.
Right. Yeah. The Boulder Police Department, they dropped the bomb on that case by the crime scene being contaminated, letting all those people in the whole house should have been roped off. No one should have been allowed in the house.
No, nobody. Just the
And then
parents
the
should have
DA's
remained in
office,
Burke.
they chose not to prosecute, even though the grand jury chose to indict.
Exactly.
Didn't
And
one of the investigators, when Patsy Ramsey was dying of breast cancer, didn't one of them go to see her hoping to get a, deathbed confession from her? I saw that in the movie. I don't know if that's true.
um, I have seen that in one of the movies, and they have it portrayed as Detective Linda Arndt.
Mhm.
If that truly happened, I am not 100% sure, so I'm not going to comment on that. The only thing I could say is that if it did happen, like I said, I'm not aware, or they could have just added that into that movie just for, dramatic effect.
Dramatic effects. So the
But
investigator, Lou, what's his name? Lou Smith?
Smith,
Smith.
yes.
I saw him in a documentary and he was talking about the boot print in the basement. Could have been from a man that lived not too far from the Ramseys, who was a predator. Um, I saw this in a documentary, but that man committed suicide. Do you know that guy's name? Do you know what I'm
Michael
talking about?
Helgoff.
Yes, you know everything, Mike. I love it. I love it. So, what do you think about him as a possible suspect?
um, like
Debunk
I said,
him for us.
I think that, like I said, I think he was another person that they kind of just threw in front of the bus to deceive and take all the attention away from them.
Hmm.
Um, because after Alex Hunter basically made that statement on live television, stating that the list of suspects narrows and soon there will be no one on the list but you. 2 days later,
My dog.
Helgoff 2 days later, Helgoth was found dead from apparently self-inflicted gunshot wounds. But his DNA also was not a match, and you know, there was no evidence of him being in that home.
Right. Hold on one sec, Mike.
Sure.
Hold on. Well, baby, get your little butt out here. Oh my goodness. She was crying to get out. Okay, I'm back. So, do you want
Okay.
to look at the chat and see if the chat have any questions? Let's look and see what they're
Sure.
saying.
That sounds good.
Okay. Lisa Irwin, they grasp at every straw. I do not believe a kidnapper would come in a basement window, kill a child, do all that stuff. Hold on, I'm behind in my chat here. Let's see. Sapphire. Patsy's friend also said she would never wear the same outfit 2 days in a row. The devil is in the details.
Yes, that's very true. That was a statement that was made.
Hey to everyone else that came in. Happy New Year's Eve, guys. So
Yes, Happy New Year, everyone.
do you guys have any questions about the case? Any input? Put it in the chat. Michael answer it because he knows all about this case. You do. You know a lot of
Thank you.
details. Now, lady wants out. Okay, come on. I'm gonna have to get off here in a minute and go check on my Smokey. He's in there by himself. Red Rum. I used to think the family was involved with her death, but after recent research, I feel like the family is involved in the cover up and possibly the coroner or other political figure is involved. Short Nice, what was the cause of death?
So the cause of death, we know she was asphyxiated due to the strangulation, and also, she was bludgeoned in the head.
Okay. So asphyxiation by strangulation, and she had a fractured skull, didn't she?
Correct. Yes. Which was the same size of, as they think, a mag light, which was found on the Ramsey's kitchen counter, which had no fingerprints on it whatsoever. The mag light was completely wiped clean. The batteries inside were completely wiped clean. There was no fingerprints on that mag light whatsoever, and nobody knew where it came from, which I just find very odd.
Right. Mandy, I have to go sort dinner. We'll catch up later. Just like to wish CC, Mike, and everyone a happy, healthy, prosperous new year. Thank you. You too,
Thank you, Mandy
Mandy.
Hall. You too.
Sapphire, thank you both for doing this live. Mike, thank you. Rock, thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Short, nice, overkill. A lot of hate there. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and like strangulation, that's very personal. Very personal. Hold on, Mike. Let me mute a second. Here comes Mark, and my
Sure.
dogs are going to. I had to get them off the porch, or Skylar was going to go crazy when she saw that truck. Username, Mike. In your opinion, who do you think killed her?
So since this is Cece's channel, and I don't want to publicly, I guess I could say, state a name, I will just say that I don't believe that there was any intruder in that home. I firmly believe that someone in that home committed the murder. And I'm just going to leave my statement as that.
Okay. I don't mind if you say, but if you don't want to publicly say, I get it. Lisa Irwin, one thing we really have to realize is that Patsy was not a normal mother. She had an obsession. Um, Lisa, we don't mind dogs barking. Ha ha ha. My landlord does down at the office, though. Username says, I agree. So y'all hear him? They're not as bad as they normally are. They normally go crazy. Ask Sapphire. She's rolled in here before and come in the door. They go crazy. Um, so a lot of what do you think about the theory of Burke eating pineapple at the table, JonBenet coming up, getting a piece, him taking that Mac light, hitting her in the head?
Well, that has
What do
been
you
a
think about
theory,
that?
and it's a very strong theory, honestly, especially, knowing the evidence from the fingerprints from that pineapple ball and knowing the evidence that it was found in her system and the mag light being in the home and, him on that interview stating, he thinks someone took her down to the basement and hit her in the head. And, you know, it, everything kind of just leads up to just being very odd and so much information and evidence that we have on video and on file. I can't say that I don't think that theory is false.
Right, right. Because why lie? Why lie about the pineapple and stuff? I'm gonna tell you, when something happens to your child, you're gonna remember, like, if you fed a child a snack the night before and stuff like that, you're gonna answer those questions straight up. They
Exactly.
Patsy lied about the pineapple, and it's sitting right there on the freaking table. And then in the autopsy, they found what they thought was pineapple in her stomach. I don't think the coroner could be 100% on that. I've read her autopsy before. I think I'm right. Am I right
Yes,
about that?
it says that there, I'm going off memory here, that there were yellow to greenish fragments that consisted of the look of pineapple, or yellow to tan fragments.
Right. Yeah, the flashlight was cleaned of prints, Sapphire says. Yeah, yeah. Like if you pick up my flashlight right now, it's got prints all over it. I mean, it's not going to be clean.
Exactly. And for the batteries to be wiped clean and have no fingerprints, that's just even more strange.
Username says, "Have you watched the Nancy Grace theory on the case?"
I might have. If it's an older one, I probably haven't seen it in a while, but if it's newer, then I may not have. It depends on when it was aired.
Right.
And also, there another thing I want to bring up in an interview that Patsy did before, she blatantly states that she would do anything she had to do to protect her children. So who's to say that that's not what happened?
Yeah. That's
And
a
as
good
well as
possibility. She lost one child, she wasn't going to lose another.
exactly. And her body was found December 26th. Her tombstone reads December 25th. That's just weird to me. How did they know exactly if she was killed on the 25th or if she was killed on the 26th?
Right. That is weird, isn't it? That is really weird. I didn't know that. Maybe you'd mentioned that to me before, but that is so strange. Maybe they just picked. I don't know. Maybe
Well,
they just
in an
picked the
interview,
date.
John Ramsey was asked that question of why her tombstone reads December 25th and not December 26th, since that's when her body was found. And I believe his response was that they wanted people to know that just because that it was a holiday and a happy time, that not all things happy happen on holiday times.
What the hell?
So that was another just very strange, weird statement.
Red Rum says, I need to know why the coroner was there before EMS. That makes zero sense to me. That's not what happens. Also, there was snow on the coroner's vehicle indicating it had been there for a bit.
Yeah,
Username. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say with the coroner, there was some weird things. with that. Like, for instance, they say that the fingernail clippers that the coroner used when clipping some of JonBenet's fingernail clippings, that they could have been the same fingernail clippings that were used on a prior body. He might not have changed them like he should have. So that DNA could have came from DNA underneath that clipper.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Transfer DNA, that happens. Yeah. Red Ram says one of the men in the EMS vehicle and on the first call and second call verified this recently. I never knew this, and it's bothering the hell out of me. Patsy, username says Patsy was so nasty in interviews. Not sad, but angry and defensive. Yeah, she was
Yes,
quite
very
rude.
defensive, very
Uh,
defensive.
Patsy seems like Mommy Marsh said Patsy seems like she would beat on JonBenet the way Joan Crawford did to Christina in Mommy Dearest. Um, it's a good possibility. She could
We don't know.
she could have whipped her and stuff for wetting the bed. Who knows?
And also, I would like to make another statement that was made from their gardener that they had, which could sound odd if you really think of it, but he said that when he was, doing gardener work, and I think it was fall, JonBenet was playing, in the leaves that he was raking up,
Hmm.
and she told him, I really miss my daddy, and he was like, oh, he'll be home, and because he did a lot of business trips,
Yeah.
and she asked him, is love supposed to hurt this bad? Now, I don't know what child would understand, you know, if love hurts or don't hurt at such a young age. They
But
don't have those kind of sensibilities.
that is such an odd statement for a child to make. I mean, if he's telling the truth, it's hearsay, but um, that's an odd statement. I think someone was abusing her for
There
sure.
are there are some medical examiners that do believe that there were prior sexual, you know, abuse going on. Some say that there was prior sexual abuse 48 hours before um, her body was found.
So the autopsy says no sexual assault, doesn't it? Like she wasn't.
Well, the
Mm,
autopsy reads funny with that. I would have to look at it precisely. I don't want to go off quote of what's on there.
right.
But there have been numerous medical examiners that have looked at that and looked at all of the details and all of the information. And like I said, there's some that say that there was no sexual assault, and there's some that say that there was. But we know that there was a shaving of wood from the paintbrush that was found in her, you know, area.
Right.
Um,
So
and
this
I
reads
just
funny right here in this article about it. It says there was no conclusive evidence of rape as no semen was found on her body and her private area appeared to have been wiped clean, although a sexual assault had occurred. That reads weird, doesn't it?
it does. It reads very weird. Um, like I said, I don't think an intruder would want to use a paintbrush tip. Um, to me, that just seems like a staged.
Here's something interesting. I think Burke could tie knots and stuff to make a garrote. Wasn't there some evidence that I I don't know, he knew how to tie knots?
Well, yes, he was in Boy Scouts,
Mhm.
and back then they did teach you how to tie ropes, and we know that John Ramsey had a boat, and I'm sure he probably taught his son. or sons, how to tie like nautical ropes and stuff like that. Um, but also, which not many people do know, is that Burke's Swiss Army knife was found in the wine cellar where her body was found in the corner.
Wow, interesting. That's weird.
Very, which that's not usually put out into the public by many, but that was found in there. And I believe they did question, why was that there? How did that get there? And I
Mhm.
believe Patsy said that she took that away from him and she had it hidden where their laundry room area was.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think I don't think a perpetrator would be snooping through cabinets just to find, X, Y, and Z.
Right. Right. Hey, Carolina girl. Happy New Year. Yeah. Well, my opinion is that they acted really suspicious, and I just don't see an intruder coming into the house, practice writing a ransom note, um, knowing their way around the house, taking her, being in the house for hours and the family sleeping. I just don't see that happening. And by their behavior and stuff, I think there is a cover up. I think someone in the house did something to her. One of them. Just a question because I don't understand. Why would you think an intruder would use foreign object? Just who, me, Cheryl T?
Well,
Oh, I don't know.
oh, is the question for me or you?
I don't know who she was talking to. She might have been talking to someone in the chat. Is there a theory that there's like a foreign object or something? I don't
Well,
know.
the tip of the paintbrush,
Oh, the tip of the paintbrush.
because there was, like I said, wood, like a small wood piece found in her area.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I
Um,
guess that's what she's asking.
okay, so she said why she doesn't understand why we wouldn't think a foreign object would be used. Well, like I said, this is just my opinion. I can't picture an intruder coming into the home, doing all of these things, you know, using a paintbrush to sexualize the child, and then decide, oh, hang on, let me stop and kill her, and then wipe her clean afterwards. I don't think that an intruder would do that. Usually the intruder goes in, does what they're planning on doing, and leaves immediately. I don't
Right.
think they're going to stay there to wipe the child and blanket the child up real nice,
Write
and
ransom
and place her.
notes. Practice
Yeah,
writing
exactly, right?
ransom notes.
Practice
Yeah.
notes and a ransom note. It's just none of that really just makes sense in my opinion. But like I said, everybody's entitled to, have their own opinion. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, Schulte says, "Oh yeah, that question was for you." Okay, sorry, Cheryl. I didn't. My mind went blank. Sorry. Okay, username. Do you think the case will ever be solved? We know they put the DNA they found on her body into the CODIS national database thing,
Database.
and there's
Mhm.
been no hits so far. Username.
Um,
I wonder if John has told his new wife everything about what happened. I don't know. I gotta let Lady out. I had to let Lady out. Sorry, she was scratching on the door. Um, I'd say if he knows anything, he'll probably take it to his grave. Of
yeah,
course,
I think if they know anything, well, Patsy obviously is deceased, but I think whatever happened that night, we could only hope that there will be, you know, this will be solved.
right?
But, it's been 25 years, and, after so many years, DNA and evidence, that all that decreases, and the ransom note, they can't really test the original because once they tested that in the beginning, for DNA and whatnot, all that kind of gets destroyed. So the original note will never actually be able to be tested again.
Um, Carolina girl, I think it's possible that someone that came to the Ramsey holiday open house came back once they knew the layout of the house. So a possibility. Anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
anything's possible.
Short nice. Was this done after death? The brush. She's talking about the paintbrush. I think
Um,
before.
I
Before
believe
death.
I believe it was done after, but I don't know if there's any conclusive evidence on a timing. But I believe that officer officials believe that it was just a mere part of staging.
Right. Charlotte, I do believe that it was someone in that family that killed that sweet baby. It is heartbreaking that she never has gotten any justice. I know it. She's a beautiful child without all the makeup and
Yes,
stuff.
exactly.
I mean, she was beautiful in her glitz photos and beauty pageants, but she looked like a lot older than what she really was, and she was just a baby, in my opinion. How old was she? 5?
She was 6.
6? Why would John tell his wife anything? Withholding evidence in a murder case is a crime. Would he risk it? No, he'll take it to the grave with him. I believe they covered up. I believe John and Patsy both did a cover up. I'm not going to flat out accuse Bert because then he might sue you. Didn't he sue like CNN or
He did
CBS or
sue
somebody?
CBS for their documentary, and what's odd to me is that they did come to an agreement on a settlement, but that is not disclosed on what that was. And that agreement, could honestly be anything from $1, $10, $100. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That whole thing there, because they probably went into the court and they probably said, okay, well, please try to tell us why he couldn't be involved. And they probably really couldn't display evidence on why he couldn't because, like I said, they have the pineapple DNA evidence on the bowl. They have the nightgown evidence of his fingerprints all over that was wrapped up in the blanket.
yeah,
So they could have settled, but it could have been, like I said, for $1. And if you do go on TV networks, you could still buy that episode. So if they really sued for millions of dollars, that would be taken right off the TV. You would not be able to watch that ever again. But it's still on there because I checked maybe about a week ago, and I think they have it for like $6.99 or something like that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Could
So
they
if
have
he
came to an
truly,
agreement where, I don't know, they had rights to the episode? I don't know. And he still got money?
well, they
Maybe
could have,
they
like I said, they could have been in the courtroom and said, well, this is our theory of what we believed happened. You tell us how it couldn't be true, and they probably really couldn't give much um, of how it couldn't be true because there is so much evidence that they, like I said, they could have settled for $1, $10, $100, $1,000, but that
yeah,
episode still aired on TV, and if that was the case and he sued for defamation, that would be taken right off.
right. Carolina girl. The Golden State Killer was caught 4 decades later, so I have hope. You're right, girl. Never
Yes,
give up hope,
yes,
Mike. It may be solved. I'm
yes. I
seeing a
really
lot of
hope.
cases solved these days from decades ago.
I really hope I'm alive to, see that happen
Me
whenever that
too.
may happen.
Lisa, using litigation to silence news and speculation should be a crime, in my opinion. So he sued them because that documentary just basically what flat out accused him.
Correct. They, they had a bunch of people that were involved in the case throughout the years. On that episode, I think it was called the case of JonBenet Ramsey or something like that.
Yes.
Um, you had James Kohler on there who wrote a book about the case, and it's a really great book for anybody that wants to read it. Um, I think it's JonBenet Ramsey, What Really Happened, something like that. You can find it on Amazon, I'm sure, if you put in James Kohler or JonBenet. I'm sure the book will come up.
Yeah.
I read that book. It's a really, really good book. It gives you a lot of detailed information on the case and what he believes happened. He doesn't necessarily state a name, but through all the evidence that he displays in his book, and you kind of come up to who he believes did it.
Yeah. John Ramsey, he also wrote a book, right? He's wrote several, I think.
Yeah, I think there was two. There was the one him and Patsy did, Death of Innocence, and then there was the other book that he wrote, I believe, by himself. Um, something, grieving after suffering, or something on the terms of that.
Yeah. I definitely won't be reading that.
No, I wouldn't waste my money.
No. Does Mike have his own channel?
I
No.
believe that was asked last time.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, my dogs are barking.
It's all
I
right.
believe that was asked last time. I do not. I've thought for a very long time of doing a JonBenet channel.
Yeah.
Um, it might happen one day. I'm not sure. So if it ever does, I'll make sure Cece knows so she can announce that.
Hey, you should do that. And you wouldn't have to do it in live streams. You could just like start from the beginning of the case and just do, short videos, do it in parts and upload them. Probably get a lot of views because you know a lot and stuff and you know all the facts, everybody's names. Probably do good.
Yeah, it's
Um,
something I'll have to take into consideration.
Username. If someone in the house killed her by accident, they could have just confessed and none of this would have gone this far. I think Patsy was so socially conscious she was afraid it would ruin her life. Patsy was definitely a freaking Southern belle, one of those Southern women's, that always grease their pants, always dressed to the nine.
Yes, she was
Um,
all about perfection.
all about perfection. The report contradicts itself to me. The whole case is strange. It's
It's
sad.
strange. Yes,
It's sad for John
it's very
Bonet.
sad. It's very sad that it's taking this long um, to resolve.
Yeah. In this case, it brings out the weirdos too, like the car guy. Remember him,
John
John Martin?
Markar.
Yes, confessed to killing her, but proven he didn't. Like,
Yeah, he's a weirdo. You had Gary Oliva,
yeah,
another weirdo.
another weirdo. Hey, Mike, it has been a good conversation. I appreciate you coming up,
Yes,
taking the
thank you so
time
much
to
for
come
having
up.
me. I appreciate it.
I'm going to have to get off here and go in and check on my Smokey, check on all my dogs. You have a great New Year's Eve, and
Thank you.
you'll
You
have to
too.
come. Hey, we'll have to do this again next year.
Yes, hopefully, it's solved by then, but if not, we'll have to come back here again.
Yeah, for the 26th anniversary. We'll try to do it before the anniversary next year.
Sounds good. Well, I just want to thank everybody for, coming on to the live and wish everyone a happy new year.
Hey, I appreciate it so much. This has been a good stream, and I always enjoy having you up.
Thank you. Well, you take care and we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye, hun.
See you later. Bye, everyone.
Okay, guys, I'm going to get off here. I got to go check on my doggies and get some stuff done. If I can, I'm going to do a New Year's Eve stream. But I got to get some stuff done and get myself put together. because if I do a New Year's Eve stream, I will need to be on camera. Anyways, y'all have a great day. Be safe, be kind, and peace. I'm coming, Ladybug.